Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Jeanette Alomia, Director of Guidance for the Huntington Schools. Welcome, welcome. By a show of hands, grade 11. Any parents and students of from grade 11? Okay. The majority of you are from grade 11. What about grades 9 and 10? Okay, great. So thank you, welcome. So tonight's presentation, you're definitely going to hear straight from the source from two amazing representatives from Penn State and SUNY Oswego. We will be recording this presentation as well as posting the presentation and the recording onto the website. So for future viewings, or if you need to go back to the information, there's going to be a comprehensive presentation with regards to the college admissions process, but most importantly, to talk about and discuss the college admissions essay, right, and how important it is, more so now than before, due to the fact that colleges are actually moving towards being test optional, sometimes test blind. So I will definitely stop talking now, and without further ado, I'll introduce to our amazing guest speakers from Penn State Admissions and SUNY Oswego Admissions, Ms. Lori Wax and Ms. Kate Anderson.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Lori Wax. I am the Regional Admissions Counselor and Recruiter for Penn State for New York. We are actually both regional, and we both live right next door in the Harborfield School District, so we're very close by. I pass this school all the time. We have both been through this process with our own 3 children each, so we do understand all the stresses and concerns and everything that you're going through now. Hopefully we can put some ease, give you some ease, and show you that this process is really okay as long as you know what you're doing, and just try to relax and enjoy it.
Great, thanks so much. And I'm Kate Anderson. I'm Associate Director of Admissions for SUNY Oswego. We may talk a little bit about our schools. And if there are any questions at any point along the way, please feel free to ask. We are going to focus on the essay, but it's hard to just talk about that. We're going to talk about the other elements too. And as you approach this process, one of the things you really need to do is think about finding that right college fit. So there are a lot of factors up on the screen. You know, the kind of school. We both work for state schools in different states, but they're private schools. They're schools with religious affiliations. Just talked to someone who said that she wanted to be close to home and went to Adelphi, and other people are willing to, go on a plane or a longer drive. So that's just a very personal choice, but it's important to listen to what you want and who you are and what you're going to be comfortable with. Different size schools feel different. Oswego is a medium-sized school with 6,000 undergraduates, and Penn State has?
So at our main campus, 47,000, so we're pretty large. We do have smaller campuses as well.
So a big variation, right? Schools have different majors and subjects that you can study. Campus life, some schools are mostly commuter. Like a community college maybe, or even some other schools. Others are very residential. Sometimes there's Greek life, fraternities, sororities, sports, just the whole range. Cost is definitely a factor in college admissions, but not something you need to worry about at this point. We always say cast a wide net. There are, certainly SUNYs are super affordable, but they're private schools that will give you money that would match the cost of a SUNY. So sometimes people say to me, they're only applying to SUNYs. Well, that's fine, but maybe, the perfect school for you would cost the same amount, just isn't a SUNY. Special programs, studying abroad and honors college, support services. This is something that happens in college too. So students who maybe get extra time or notes, or whatever it is, those accommodations can continue in college. And if you receive them, you're definitely going to want to check that out at different schools.
So those are some of the factors that you should consider when trying to narrow down where to apply to college. Those are things that you are considering. The things that colleges are considering are, there are several different factors that we're considering. First and foremost is your high school transcript, your academic record. That is the single biggest factor that most schools are looking at when considering applications. But that's not the only factor. There are other pieces to this application puzzle. Most schools at this point are test optional. However, if a school is test optional, if you have a great test score, it could certainly help your application. If you don't, it's fine. It won't hurt your application. Really, it gives you an opportunity to use whatever your strengths are. So if your test scores reflect your ability, that's great. If they don't and your grades are a much better reflection of your ability, absolutely do not submit your test scores. The college essay, which we're going to talk more about, is another factor in the whole process. Letters of recommendation, your extracurricular activities matter, and all of your things that you do outside of school matter, so it doesn't have to just be school clubs or organizations. Work is very important to indicate and to let us know about. Family responsibilities that are, pretty hefty and keep you away from doing some other activities that you might like to do are all important things that we should know about. If you have special talents, whether it's athletics or artistic, musical, theatrical, you've done incredible science research. There are many different things that might, really make you stand out that's important for you to let us know about. And then one other factor that, how many of you have heard the term demonstrated interest? So, excellent. So demonstrated interest is a factor that some schools are considering when looking at your application. And that's basically you showing how interested you are in the school. Not every school does. Neither of our schools technically track interest, right? You don't say that you use it for... But we are only human, and when we're looking at applications and we know that you have opened our emails, and yes, we can tell when you've opened our emails, when you have shown up because we came to visit your school, or we were at a college fair and you came by and filled out the card or the online form that we have. All those things help show that you are interested in a particular college. So while some schools absolutely will tell you that they do look at whether or not you have visited or you have attended virtual programs or shown up when the schools visited your school, other schools will tell you they don't track interest, but it can never hurt to show that you're interested in a school. So those are the different components that colleges are considering.
Yeah, so this is sort of a view from our side of the desk, right? And demonstrate interest. I mean, what Lori said bears repeating about the fact that we can tell, did you come and talk to us at a fair or at your school when we came to visit, or the emails. We can tell if you opened them. We can tell if you clicked on them. Good piece of advice is when you fill out, most people are going to use the common application, create a college email address, because that way you could even share it. Your parents could help you check out some of those emails, which sometimes include things like a free application, or we're coming to Long Island and you can meet someone from a school that you're interested in. So consider creating an email for this process that you use for the schools that you're applying to, because we will be sending you many, many, many emails, but you're going to want to stay on top of that. You also should understand how we look at your high school transcript, because you'll have your transcript and you see a number on there, you see your unweighted GPA and your weighted GPA, and you may say, yay, I have a 94. We may not call that a 94 because schools all over the country have very different weighting systems and they have different offerings. And a lot of colleges are going to recalculate your grade point average. So you probably want to look at your transcript with an eye to that. So we're focusing, all courses are important and they can matter, but we focus most closely on the core courses, the 5 core areas, which are English, math, social studies, science, and world language. Anything that's on your high school transcript counts, so you may have had accelerated math or science here at Findlay Middle School or whatever middle school you went to. And so you may have math, science, or world language, and that will count. New York State makes you continue with social studies, right, and English. You have to take those. You could have 5 free periods senior year. Do not have 5 free periods senior year. That's not something that we want to see on you. I believe in having lunch, not filling your schedule way too full. But stick with those core courses. We like to see Regents level or above. It doesn't have to all be AP or honors or college level. If you can do some of that, great. Everyone finds the level of academic rigor that's right for them. But try to challenge yourself. Remember also that senior grades matter and senior course selection matters, because you don't have grades yet, but we see the classes that you're signed up for senior year. So can't spend too much time on the transcript, right? I do. I jumped.
There we go. So there are different ways that you can apply to college. How many of you have heard of the Common Application? Excellent. That is probably the most common application that is used. Many, many colleges accept it. There's also a coalition application, which not as many schools use, but some do. And then there are school-specific applications. The SUNYs have an application. You can apply on the Common App or through the SUNY application. It's the same for Penn State. I believe the California system has that. CUNY has that. There are probably some other state systems that offer their own application. But if you're applying to numerous schools, which most students are, probably the Common App makes the most sense. For any of these applications, though, will have an essay, a personal statement. So, and they have different word requirements, different prompts, but basically there's a lot of overlap and they're similar. So we're going to focus on the Common application today. There are 7 different prompts that you can choose from. And when you're picking which one you use, basically start thinking about what you might like to write about, what's a story you'd like to tell about yourself to a college admissions person who's reading your application. The college essay is your one opportunity to speak directly to the person who's reading your application. So this is your chance to just tell us your story in your own words and show us something that's not elsewhere on your application.
So yeah, right. What is the point of the essay? Why do we make you do this? Good writing, good communication skills are super important. They're important in high school, in college, graduate school, life. And so by going through this process of drafting something, going over it again, proofreading it, having someone else look at it, it's something that you will do throughout your life. And we see a big variety of essays, and sometimes we think these students are ready for college, and sometimes we think they're maybe not quite so ready. But do try to see it. It is the one thing that's undone, right? That's left to do at this stage, because you're almost done, many of you, with junior year. At that point, we're going to use that grade point average. You're going to ask teachers to write letters of recommendation. Your school counselor will write a letter. Thank those people. They put their hearts and souls into those letters. And just as the essay can sometimes be the thing that puts you into the yes pile, there are times when it's your counselor letter or a letter from a teacher that makes us really understand, you as a person, what was going on, and sometimes really makes the difference. So everyone has a story, right? Everyone has something that they can write about. Many students sort of feel like, oh, I can't write nothing crazy has happened to me. I didn't, I live on Long Island, and yes, we had a hurricane, a few of them, but what else? We're still reading about Sandy. But know that some of the very best essays are about very, very ordinary topics. Just something you love, something. So we're going to actually take the time do you want to say?
I was just going to add to that. You definitely don't have to have something catastrophic have happened to you to write a great essay. We're not looking for that. Some students do have obstacles that they've overcome and faced, and that's great to write about if that's your situation. But as Kate said, we've read essays about Sunday dinners, commutes to school, some very basic things that are just meaningful essays because they're really sharing your story. So, do you want to have people read?
I don't know. I think because of the microphone and the recording, we should just read them. But it's worth the time to read the prompts. And you're probably going to want, these are the actual prompts that any junior out there is going to be answering. And so you want to read them and think, is this the question that I want to answer? Is this the essay that I'm going to write? So number 1 is a pretty popular one. Some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful, they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. Things that you love. You could all in a minute write down 10 things that you love, and any one of those would be a good essay topic. And maybe kind of a fresh, interesting, different essay topic than the ones that we see all the time. So we do see students who are really just passionate about something or have something that they love to do. And this makes a great essay.
Right. That, and also some students talk about their background. They talk about cooking meals from their, and their heritage with grandparents, whatever, but talking about just their identity and things that, important things in their culture. So, and sometimes it's just a passion that a student has for an activity. So it's a wide range of things that this particular topic can cover. So the next question or prompt is, the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? So again, this is, overcoming an obstacle is a great thing to write about. However, if you haven't actually overcome the obstacle, it is not a good topic to write about. If you learn something from it, that's fine as well. But you definitely want to make sure that you're talking about something that you overcame. We see lots of different essays, and one that comes to mind is a student that wrote about an obstacle that she faced was struggling through her chemistry class. And she wrote all about how she struggled, and then finally she dropped the class. So not exactly overcoming the obstacle, and certainly had she struggled and persevered and stuck with it, it could have been a good essay, but probably she had other things that were more relevant and more important for us to know about her to write about. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, lots of examples come to mind. One, I remember the people reading your application in the dead of winter, probably sitting in a small, dark office. There was one I read where the student's grandparents had taken her on a Mediterranean cruise, and she dropped her iPhone overboard. And that was what that was her big hardship. And I was like, that really doesn't rate in my book since you were on a Mediterranean cruise. And I'm thinking her grandparents probably bought her a new one the next day. Anyway, something to think about. Have someone else read your essay. We'll talk about that. So number 3, reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking, and what was the outcome? Probably not as popular as some of the others, but there are times that it's done very well. Do you have an example?
The only time I read this, it was actually an excellent essay, was a student was at a party, and in talking to people, she realized that, everybody felt differently politically than she did. And she talked about how rather than, argue about it, she tried to really make everybody, to hear what people were saying and to listen to what they said and then respond, but to keep it, to just treat everybody's opinions. And so it just stood out to me because she was really very diplomatic. But I don't usually see this as an essay topic. It's not a very popular one. So reflect on something that someone has done for you that has made you happy or thankful in a surprising way. How has this gratitude affected or motivated you? So this is one of the newer questions that's on the Common App. I love it because I love positivity, and it's really a great opportunity for you to share what you consider your blessings are and what you're grateful for in life, whether it's, a specific thing that has happened or, whatever it is that you are truly thankful for. It's definitely a refreshing topic for us. So if you have something that fits that, and all of these are great, none of these topics are better than anything else. You're just looking to find the one that your story fits the best.
Read some really nice ones in number 4 where students talked about a teacher who'd really changed their life, or a counselor, or someone who cared about them, or a family member. They did add this question during COVID when they added another question that we'll talk about. And I think they were worried that everyone would just go dark with these essays because the world was a difficult time. And I think they wanted people thinking about positive things. So number 5. Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. Now, we generally say you don't want to get hyper political, or certainly not, in a biased way. But I do think that a lot of current events or things happening in the world make students think a lot about some very big topics, social justice, things like that. And so sometimes we see essays that talk about current events and why they mattered to them and how it maybe informed them going for an internship or a job that they did or some community service that they did.
Right. Yeah. No, that one is definitely one I see often. Describe a topic, idea, or concept you find so engaging that it makes you lose all track of time. Why does it captivate you? What or who do you turn to when you want to learn more? So all of these can overlap in a little bit. I always think this one is fairly similar to the first prompt in that it's just something that you are absolutely passionate about or interested in or intrigued by. But if your particular thing that you're passionate about fits this prompt better, that's a great prompt for you to use.
I have an example of number 6 that remains one of my favorite. A student from Nassau County who had a really interesting first line of her essay, which was, "I am so envious of shrimp." Now, I read 2,500 applications this year. I've read a lot in my life. Never have I seen a first line like that. I was completely, confused and sort of interested in where she was going with this, and it was for question 6. She was an artist, and she loved color. She loved working with art and color, and according to her, the shrimp eye can see 17 times the number of colors as the human eye. It was really interesting and different. I love it when I learn something in an essay. I don't even know if it was true. One of these days I should Google it probably. But it was just really creative, and it just, she was so eloquent about her passion about art. And, I just still am thinking about that essay. If none of 1 through 6 have spoken to you, there's the prompt number 7. Share an essay on any topic of your choice. It can be one you've already written, one that responds to a different prompt, or one of your own design. You have complete freedom to write about whatever you want. You could even hand in something that you did in high school already. I don't really recommend that. I read one this year, and it had the 10th grade U.S. history teacher's name and, period 4, and it was about the American Revolution. Okay. How did I learn anything about the student who was not alive during, who has nothing to do with the American Revolution? It was something that student probably got an A on, and yes, she wrote an essay, but it was a missed opportunity for her to share something about herself that made her sort of jump off the page, jump off the screen. But remember that if you just have a blank page or blank screen, you can hand in something that you've done.
You do have that option. Keep in mind that if you were to sit down for an interview and somebody said, "So tell me about yourself," this is what you're doing with your college essay. This is your chance to tell us about yourself. If you think that none of the other 6 prompts work for you, or you don't want to be worried that you're not exactly answering the prompt, then number 7 could be a great option for you. I also do not recommend that you hand in something that doesn't tell a story about yourself. So there is an additional optional question. There is a community disruption such as COVID-19 and other natural disasters can have long-lasting impacts. If you need it, this space is yours to describe those impacts. Colleges care about the effects on your health and well-being, safety, family circumstances, future plans, and education, including access to reliable technology and quiet study spaces. So if COVID-19 impacted you in a way that was really above and beyond what we all were, in the way that we were all impacted, then write about it. If it's just, I really didn't like online learning and I really missed my friends, we all felt that way. But if you were in a situation where family members were first responders, or a family member was sick with COVID, or you lost a job or a life, God forbid, those are things that would be, important for you to share. If it's just something that is pretty much what we all went through, I would not use this space. You don't have to fill out every question. Particularly this is an opportunity if you were in an extraordinary circumstance.
Yeah, a lot of people just feel like they have to write something, and what they write isn't, really worth this because it's not unique in any way. There is also a whole other 650 words. So remember, in the main essay, you have to write between 250 and 650 words for your essay. And then there are a whole other up to 650 words for additional information. So why would you fill that out? There are times when you want to write the essay about what you want to write about, but there may be something else happening in your life that had an impact on your grades. So we're looking at your transcript and what you took. We look at the trend of your grades. Maybe you were consistently strong. Maybe COVID was rough. We see that a lot. Sometimes grades do weird things, and you see a big drop-off in grades. And we have no idea why, right? What happened? We only see the numbers. And we have to, those are real numbers, and we sort of have to use them unless we learn what was going on behind the scenes. And you want to find a space in your application to go in however much detail you want. It doesn't have to be great detail. Or you could speak with your school counselor or a teacher and have that included in his or her letter. But what can happen, at home? There can be difficult divorces. There can be illnesses. There can be family members who pass away, all sorts of struggles, or a sibling who's struggling, anything that made your life really difficult at that time. And because of that, your grades suffered. But if we know what was happening, we're not going to penalize you for that. We can kind of look past that a little bit. Make sure you're back on track, hope that things are better now, which is why sometimes we do ask for senior grades, first quarter or mid-year grades if we're not sure if that rough patch was junior year. That's the most recent, and that's the time you don't really want your grades to be suffering. But, again, things happen that are beyond your control. So and I understand why students, maybe you don't want to write about the tough thing. There was an application I read, and the student wrote about putting together a computer, loved computers. That was his passion. Great. In the counselor letter, I found, but his grades junior year, not so great. There was a definite change. The counselor letter told me the student had cancer junior year. I was floored, right? I was sort of surprised he didn't write about that. I had a chance to meet with the student, and I was interested. I said, so, you didn't write about this major thing. He said, that happened to me. It wasn't me. I had to go through that, but I didn't love that. I love computers. I wanted to write about computers. But I was very happy. Not happy, but it was important to learn about what was going on. Thankfully, he was fine and all was well. But knowing that, did we care about the drop in the grades junior year? No, not at all. So this last part here is just really quickly, there's a major Supreme Court case that's going to be decided soon about affirmative action and whether it can be used in admissions. And the Common Application has added just this year, this is brand new, saying that if the court decides a certain way, the Common Application may add some questions. You may say something new that gives you a chance to talk about your background, your story.
So in addition to the main personal statement or college essay that's on the Common Application, many schools, am I blocking it? I think the other way. Oh, oops. Okay, all right. Oh yeah, there's the light. Yeah. Anyway, so in addition to the main essay, many colleges will give you either a required supplemental essay or an optional supplemental essay. And while I completely understand how stressed you all are and how many things you have on your plate, these supplemental essays are really a golden opportunity to express your specific interest in a specific school. Some schools will ask very specific questions that don't relate to why you're interested in that school. They will ask they're trying to get some insight into the way you think or what's important to you in a way that may or may not be covered in your personal statement. However, many schools are going to ask you questions like, why do you want to come to this school? Or what would you take advantage if you were a student here? And that is such a great opportunity for you to really express your interest to that specific college. And oftentimes when schools have these supplemental essays, they carry a little bit more weight even than the main essay. So make sure when you do set up your Common Application and you do choose your schools, you can see which ones do have these supplements. And something I definitely recommend as you start this college application process, start a spreadsheet where you're keeping track of all the schools you're applying to, what the different requirements are, so what their deadlines are, how many recommendations, if any, they require, if there's a supplemental essay, what it is about. So that way you can really keep track of what you're doing. Sometimes you can repurpose some of these essays, but if you do that, you want to make sure that you're changing any names or towns or anything that would give away the fact that you have used this essay for another school. But don't just, if it's why do I want to go to this college, don't just say because the football team is good and the campus is pretty. You really want to show that you want to come here because there's a specific program you're interested in studying. You've read what a certain professor is doing research about. There's a club or an organization that you want to get involved with. It doesn't have to be an academic reason. It can be extracurricular, but it should be something that's very specific to the school and to you.
So questions we get asked a lot, and you might want to ask of the schools that you're looking at, because schools do review applications in different ways. At some schools, one person's making a decision. Other schools, it's a whole committee. Sometimes applications are read sequentially. I think people are always surprised at how much time on average we read an application. We have thousands of applications, so we don't have a great deal of time. Probably 7 to 10 minutes an application with, a lot of time spent on the transcript and of course reading the essay and the letters. Some essays you can read pretty quickly, and some schools, if they're getting 90,000 applications, may not have the bandwidth to to read every word, but they're going to check, did you answer the prompt? Did you stay within the word limit? Does this seem to be standard written English? Are there paragraphs? So many essays that are just one paragraph, and they're so tiring. They're hard to read, right? And people aren't capitalizing the word I, or they just run together. And, that is not the way to do it. Show that you know how to formulate an essay. It's not a middle school essay. You don't have to do topical sentence, this and that. You have free range to sort of be creative. I've seen poems, I've seen songs, I've seen all sorts of things, but you want to make it easy for us, not make us work too hard.
Exactly. We're not spending a lot of time, unfortunately. It's our favorite part of the whole application. I mean, we both say all the time, we love getting to know students and reading their essays, but we don't have as much time as we'd like. So you don't want us to have to be looking up words or trying to figure out what you're talking about and going back, wait, what did they say? So try to just use, simple language, check your grammar, check your spelling, but we definitely, we love reading it. Just make it so it's not hard for us. What was the next? Proofread. Oh, yes, proofread. And when you proofread, there are a couple ways that you should do that. First of all, you should always read your essay out loud in addition to proofreading it to yourself and then read it out loud. Spell check is great, but it does not always catch everything. There are words like coma and comma that would be, a spell check would never catch that you're using the wrong word in the sentence. So you definitely want to have somebody else read your essay as well as you. Have either your English teacher, your counselor, your parent, somebody else should read your essay and just make sure that it makes sense and your spelling and your grammar is correct.
We actually sort of enjoy the times when people rely on spell check too much because we get a laugh when the whole essay is about the stock market and they spell it STALK. Or Crohn's disease spelled CRONE. You get it. You can see how this happens. I read a whole essay this year about the students so proud of having overcome all diversity, and he meant adversity. They're very similar words, right? And you know what you meant to write. Your eye is just going to gloss over that, and spell check will not catch it. So that's why you want to proofread. If you're struggling with what to write about, definitely reach out to friends and family, because I think a lot of times students think, well, I've done this since I was 4, so it's not that interesting because it's just always been a part of my life. Well, not a part of everyone's life. So maybe that thing that you do would be a great thing to write about. I think sometimes your friends and your family have a better perspective on that, and we've seen it in workshops where students get together and help each other find a topic to write about, which I think is really nice.
And I just want to say that I think it's very stressful to try to find the perfect topic. So I always recommend write about 3 different things. Probably there are things that you're deciding, should I write about this, should I write about that? Start writing those things you're considering. One of them is going to just kind of start to flow better than the others. So don't put the pressure on yourself that you have to find the perfect topic before you start writing. Chances are you may use some of the other ones anyway. So definitely take that stress off and write a few different things at the same time. And remember that this process is an evolution. You're not going to write it in a day. It takes time. You're telling your story. It's hard to do that. Like, tell me about yourself. It's really hard to figure out exactly what you want to say. If you write, you put it down for a couple of days, you come back to it. Eventually, you're going to get it to exactly what you want it to be. This is why you don't want to wait for the last minute. It is really a great idea to try to start this summer because you hopefully have some time. Senior year gets very busy. So try to start the process soon.
Absolutely. And I think the corollary to that is that don't worry about how many words you're writing. It's easier to write long, right? And don't focus on that length because you are going to go back through it many times and keep on tightening that essay and putting in the word that that's just the right word that you want to use. It's always easier to cut it down and tends to make a really, a tighter, stronger essay. But don't worry about the length as you're writing. Don't just stop at 650 words because it'll probably just trail off. So do's and don'ts. There's some cardinal rules to the college essay. You must answer a prompt, and you must stay within the word count. You try to cut and paste 700 words in, the last 50 words will just be gone because it counts the words. We've talked about proofreading and spell check. thesaurus. You don't want to overuse the thesaurus. There's a temptation to right-click and put in a big fancy word because you're applying to college, and college seems like it's going to be hard and complex. Well, no, use your words. Usually when people use the thesaurus too much, they put in the wrong word. When a perfectly normal word will suffice. We can always tell when sometimes parents do a lot of editing, or families hire someone to help, or gosh, you could buy an essay on the internet. These are all things you don't want to do, and you do not need to resort to that because everyone has a story, and we want your voice, your 17 or 18-year-old voice, appropriate, not texting and all that, but don't overuse the thesaurus. So there was an essay this year that instead of just saying, when my father came home, this was a really great, strong essay. It would have been great. What was distracting was that instead of saying, when my father came home from work, the student had substituted the word peregrinate. When my father peregrinated home from work, which is a synonym, sort of, but not one that I don't think any of us would ever use. Or instead of clothing, they used dishabiliments, and they used a word. I was an English major, but I had to look up obnubilate. So it just got really messy, and it was so unnecessary because it would have been a great essay with just regular words. So if you read it over and it doesn't sound like you because someone told you to add a line in, take that line out and make it sound like you.
So have some faith in yourself. You are the best person to tell your story, and have some faith. You'd certainly want to get some help with proofreading and spell checking and that kind of thing, but once you get going, it's really your story, and nobody can tell it better than you. One thing that we do encourage you to do, anything that's not common knowledge, explain it. If there's a club that you're involved with that has a nickname that we wouldn't know, make sure you tell us what it is, because everybody here might know what it is, but we don't. So just make sure that you're explaining anything that we might not know. And yeah, I think we did that. Well, okay. So again, obstacles are fine to write about, but if you have not overcome them or learned anything, definitely don't want to write about it. I think probably the most important thing is do not write anything that would be offensive or demonstrate bias. None of us want to see that. It is definitely never going to help your application. You don't know who's reading your application, so really stay away from anything that might be offensive to anyone.
I think sometimes people sit down to write, and whatever's really bothering them, they want to write about. And that's fine. It's something what they want to work through, but maybe the college essay is not the place to work through that. Is that the thing that you want to share with a college? Or isn't there something maybe more interesting or positive about yourself?
We have seen numerous essays where a student is frustrated with their parent, and I will say it can be a stressful time between parents and students. So there is going to be some frustration. Not the thing to write about in your college essay. We have read some of them. There's so much more to you than that one frustration that you're having at the moment.
I think a lot of times students feel uncomfortable talking about something that they did really well. They feel like it's bragging. There's one place you can do a little bragging. It's in your college application, right? You're selling yourself to colleges. You're talking about your triumphs and good things that happened. We want to focus on those good things. We always joke, we're the office of what? Are we the office of admission or rejection? Yeah, we're looking for the reasons to admit you. So don't be too modest, right? If you accomplished something great, then tell us about it. There's a nice way to do that, without being too boastful. But I do find that students sometimes don't feel comfortable about that. So quotations that...
So, and again, we wrote it, we didn't say it, but it's always better to be positive. Everybody likes to be around positive people, so if you can be positive about yourself and others, that is always going to make a better essay. As far as quotations, you have limited space here. This is your chance to tell us your story, so using a quote, it's not horrible, but might not be the best use of your space. We want to hear your words, your last words.
No, I think that's true. I mean, sometimes people use quotations as a prompt, and that's okay. But again, don't let someone else have the last word. I mean, these are your words. You're going to want to think very carefully about your first line of your essay and your last line, because think about when you pick up a book and you read the first line. Are you interested? Sometimes. And sometimes you think it's going to be a long boring book, right? So you want your reader to be interested in your story. So if you start your essay by repeating the prompt, something without which my application would not be complete, without is fill in the blank. And we see a lot of that. That's not a great first line, right? No one's going to get hooked by that. But, I'm so envious of shrimp, I think was a pretty good first line. They got someone interested, at least got me interested. So a lot of essays also just trail off. Students don't know how to end it, or they're at 650 words and they just sort of stop, or they add in a line about, that's why I want to go to college, which has nothing to do with their essay. So you're going to want to look very carefully. I don't think you're going to write a first line, but it may not be that first line that you end up with when you realize what it is you're trying to get across in your essay. And then at the end, is there a way that you can sum it up nicely and leave your reader with, a feeling like, wow, that was a well-crafted essay. And I learned something about this student. I'm interested in this student. I want this person on my campus. So, that's easier said than done, I know. But that's, again, why, as Lori said, you're starting this process early, and good for you, you're all here. And some of you can start super early if you're in 9th or 10th grade. No, but no, it's good to think about it. But, just give yourself some time, because with enough iterations, you can end up with a really, really strong essay.
It definitely will evolve. So give it some time. You're going to start with something, and it's going to slowly but surely evolve into exactly what you want it to be. So I think we said this already, but we definitely want to hear your voice. You do not need to hire anybody. And I would definitely not use AI or ChatGPT. We are kind of looking at that now. We can usually tell when an essay is written by a student, or when an essay is not written by a student. And again, this is your chance to talk to us and tell us your story. Why would you want to give that to anybody else?
So people ask us if we've seen any ChatGPT, and we have. Sometimes you're looking at the English grades the English grades are not good in any year, and then there's this incredible essay, and it just seems unlikely that someone out of the blue wrote, it seems like somehow they got too much help with that process, right? So not writing isn't everyone's thing. I think some people love to write, and the essays probably, they say, oh, goody, I get to write an essay. And other people don't feel that way. But, it doesn't have to be an earth-shattering essay. It just, you just have to tell a story. You have to tell something. And you want to say something that isn't in the rest of the application. A lot of the essays kind of go over their grades or their activities, but we see those things in other parts of your application. So again, use this space to tell us or to elaborate on something that's in there, but you want to tell us more about it or tell us something new.
I think most students, once they get through this, are really proud of their essay and happy that they did the process. It's a great process to be able to tell something that's important to you. So don't get discouraged. You're going to be really proud when you finish this essay. So just our timeline, things that you can think about, registering for the PSAT in October. When we talked about when Kate mentioned setting up a separate email address, make sure it's separate from the one you use on the College Board or the ACT, because the email that you sign up for those tests are usually bought by many, many universities that are sending you lots and lots of emails. So that is why when you fill out the Common App, that email is only going to the colleges that you are actually applying to. So if you're planning to take the ACT or the SAT, how do you prepare for these tests? So definitely we recommend take at least a practice test. I would take a test, one of each. It's hard to know which test you would do better on. Whichever one you do better on, you can take a second time. I would not take any test more than 3 times. And then you can decide. You have the luxury of being in a situation where you can choose or choose not to send your test scores. So take it so you have it in case you need it for any reason. Do not stress about it. And then you can make your decision.
So another part of the Common Application, or really any application, is putting down your activities, right? The activities that you have been involved in high school, whether it's, inside your high school or outside of your high school, like you're on a travel team or you're involved in your church or mosque or synagogue, or you have a job. Keep a list of those, right? Because it can be hard. The 9th grade starts to seem like a long time ago. So if you're in 9th or 10th grade, and for those of you in 11th, take some time to write down all of your activities and think about the order that you want to put them in. There are 10 spots on the Common Application. Usually people start with what's most important to them or what they spend the most time on. Your 15-hour-a-week job at, Ralph's Italian Ices is more time than Relay for Life, which is a day. But they're all important. They're all good. If you need more than 10 spots, you can attach a resume or CV at most schools, unless the school says not to. So then you certainly want your most important activities, prioritized. And you have very little space on the Common Application. It's done in characters. So definitely when you're writing your essay and when you're writing out your activities, do that in a Google Doc or Word document so that you can check some spellings and go over it, and also do the character and word count. So when you cut and paste, it's going to fit in the space. Because a lot of those activities trail off. People write long. I spent 15 hours a week working at, and then it got cut off, and I don't know where they were working. So
you can definitely upload an additional information, an essay, if there's something, if you have an abstract, paper, whatever it is, you have the opportunity to add that. So most of you are in 11th grade now, so you've probably already taken the PSAT, and hopefully we saw you at the college fair this year, but if not, you'll have another chance again in the fall. So as seniors, we will be here. We'd love to see you. And then, just begin your college search, start thinking about where you want to go. Some of the things we talked about in that first slide, which was like why you want to, picking the things that are important to you in order to select which colleges you're applying to. Some of those things you don't know for sure until you actually get onto a college campus. So try to visit schools. If you can visit the schools you're thinking of applying to, that's awesome. If you can't, at least try to just get to some schools that are close by to give a sense of, do I want to be in a city or do I want to be in the suburbs? Do I like a large campus or a small campus? So definitely, start to visit schools if you can, and just really spend some time on websites and learn as much as you can. Hopefully you've already done that or started to do that, but you have a whole summer to keep, figuring this out. And really you can just stop by any campus and get a sense. You can go into the city and go to NYU or Columbia. You can go to Hofstra or Adelphi, go out to Stony Brook and just get a sense of college campuses.
So you all use Naviance, right? The system here. So when you have you come up with that list that Lori talked about, some schools you visit, schools you want to visit, schools you're thinking about, put them on your list in Naviance, schools I'm thinking about. Because then what happens is when we come to your high school, you get an email saying that Penn State is visiting next Thursday, fourth period, and you can go talk with Lori or whatever other school. There are hundreds of schools that come directly to your high school. And remember that when we're reading your application, we can see, we can click and see, wait, yeah, I definitely talked to this student. I remember that student. When I went to Huntington High School. And so it's definitely a good idea, because nothing's easier than just walking down the hall and talking with someone, right? Filling out a little card. If you don't fill out that card or scan the QR code, we're not going to remember that we talked to you.
And I think they were mostly virtual appointments here last year. So is that going to continue, or going back to in person? Excellent. So we will be back, but we all did virtual visits here. So if you only have that option, that's fine as well. There were Zoom calls set up where we gave presentations and spoke to students and answered questions. So we give you lots of options to get to know about us.
But the great thing about virtual is that you can you can explore colleges in other countries or across the country, and you can meet with representatives because they can Zoom in and meet you that way. And it all counts the same way. We don't expect everyone to travel to our campuses. It takes a lot of time and money. You do eventually want to visit a campus, but remember that you're probably the spring of your senior year, unless you applied early decision, which is a binding option. If you're still making your choice for that May 1st college decision day, in the spring of your senior year, you're probably going to visit your top 2 or 3 schools just to make that final choice, get another look at it. If you saw it before, you'll want another look, or if you didn't see it, you certainly want to take a look before maybe spending 4 years there. Lori already talked about the importance of having a spreadsheet. There's some dates. Some of these dates are shifting a little bit. The Common Application and Coalition applications become available on August 1st. It used to be if you started it earlier, everything went away, but now you can actually update, so that is good. So you could get started nice and early if you want, if you're rising seniors. Definitely use Naviance. We talked about that. You may already be familiar with all the early action, early decision. Are people pretty comfortable with that, or should we go over that?
Okay. So there are several different options that you have when applying to schools. Different schools offer different application plans. So there's early action, which is a non-binding plan. You apply early. There are deadlines. Penn State's deadline is November 1st. There may be some that are a little bit earlier, October 15th, some that are November 15th. But basically, you are applying by a certain deadline. You will hear by a certain deadline, usually sometime in December, if not sooner. And you still have until May 1st to accept your offer. So those are great plans because there's literally no downside to you. You find out early and you don't have to commit to anything until May. Definitely check with schools. We're all very transparent. If you reach out to us, there's a counselor at every school that's responsible for Long Island. We are the ones for our schools. Every school has them. That we're usually on websites, so you can easily find us. Find out, because some schools, they offer early action. If you apply early action, that's fine. If you don't, it doesn't matter. Other schools, Penn State in particular, if you want to be on our main campus, it is really important for you to apply early action because of the number of applications that we get. So, again, it varies by school, but you can reach out and ask and find out. It's usually just on a website as well. There is early decision, which is a binding plan. So those are also, you apply by a certain early deadline. You hear by the middle of December. But you are then committed to go to that school if you apply early. The benefit to early decision is for many schools, they take a much larger percentage of the applicants that apply early decision than the regular decision applicants. So you might have a greater chance of being admitted to a school if you apply early decision, but then you have to know that you want to go to that school and that you can afford to go to that school. There's also early decision too. So sometimes a student will apply to one school early decision in let's say November, they find out in December, and they're not admitted. There are a whole group of schools that have what they call ED2, where you can apply in usually January sometime, and then you'll hear early from that too, and again, you're bound to go. There are other schools that have a regular decision deadline, so usually that's around January 1st. It can vary a little bit. You apply by that date. You hear sometime, March, usually by April 1st. And then there are some schools that offer rolling admissions. So basically, as long as there are spots, you can continue to apply and be admitted. Both of our schools offer rolling admissions. So as long as there are spots, I know for us at the main campus, very few spots left, but for our other campuses, we could still have applicants now. If there's spots, we'll be happy to look at the application.
I actually love that we're rolling. I don't recommend applying, in June to start college in August, but every year we have some applicants where life has changed, or usually it's a financial change, a job loss or something. They realize they can't afford a school and they're looking for an affordable option. I love it that we can be flexible and we can get someone through all the steps and they can join in. So sometimes also students don't think they want to go away. They start out senior year saying, no, I definitely want to be close to home. And then all their friends are going away and they say, wait, I am ready now. Because senior year, a lot of change happens. And by the spring, they realize that they do feel ready and they're looking for an option. Another word of caution about early decision, Lori said it extremely well, but do know it's a contract that you sign. The student, a parent or guardian, and the school counselor signs. It's a legally binding contract. If you can't say, well, if I got into that school early, maybe I can get it. If you do that, you've broken your contract, and that's not gonna go well. I used to work at Columbia Law School. We had early decisions. Every once in a while, someone thought, maybe I could get into Yale if I got, and they, and then they didn't get in anywhere. At least not those schools, right? So, but there's a plan for everyone. You just need to keep track of these dates. But as Lori said, early action is great. There's no better feeling than in December of your senior year, know that you have a really great college option. You don't have to make a decision yet, but you can really take a deep breath, breathe a sigh of relief that you are going to college. It just really feels great. So financial aid, we could spend a whole night on, even though it's not really our area, but you will probably fill out the free application for federal student aid. Free. There's some sites out there that try to convince you to pay the money. Don't do that. This is a government site for government aid, and there's also New York State tuition assistance program that you can apply for. The FAFSA is changing. It used to be open on October 1st, and now there's some changes. So for you rising seniors, we're not exactly sure. They're saying that it's going to be much simpler. Let's hope that's the case, but the rollout is a little complicated right now.
And a little later, supposedly not coming out until the middle to the end of December. So we'll find out, to be determined, but and hopefully it will be a little bit easier. So just to wrap, focus on what you can control at this point. You've gone through high school, your grades are there. Finish your junior year strong, but you're at this point. It's really, there's not much you could do other than write the essay. Ask for if you're all whoever's a junior, definitely ask the teachers that you want to ask for recommendations. Ask them now. You want to make sure that you're giving them enough time to write those recommendations. And other than that, just have faith that there is a great school, more than one great school out there for you. There are so many wonderful schools. You don't have to just focus on the ones that you've heard of or the ones that your friends are going to. There is literally more than probably 10 schools at least that would be great schools for each one of you. I promise this process all works out. We've both been through it with our own children, and it really does all work out.
It absolutely does. It's make those college visits when you can. Know that if you can't do it now, once you're accepted to a school, there are private schools that will give you money to help visit, or they will, they'll make it very easy for you to come see their school. It's important to remember. It's very tough if you apply to a school and you're not accepted. I applied early decision somewhere and got deferred, which meant that they didn't make a decision, that, they waited until the regular pool, and then I got waitlisted, and, that was not the senior year of my dreams, right? But for most schools, especially these schools that have really, really small acceptance rates, that, they might accept 5, 7, 10% of their applicants. At Oswego, we accept more than 60% of our applicants. We're a state school. We have a mission to educate New Yorkers. We are selective, but not highly selective. And so, many more students get in. But at some of those schools, they're not saying, are you admissible? Of the thousands of applicants who would be great additions to that campus, which ones will be selected? Because those schools are having to make some really tough choices, and it can be a little subjective, right? Two students have a 90, they have the same grades. They don't really know you so well, right? But this is why use every part of your application to try to shine, to try to stand out, to try to make that case about why you'd be a great addition at a school, but don't take it too personally if it doesn't work out, because there's always graduate school.
There you go. Keep in mind that schools are trying to build a well-rounded class. So it could be that there was somebody that just had something that a school was looking for that year, and there's nothing you could do to control that. Again, there are so many different schools and several that would be great options and that you would thrive in and do well in. And so just keep an open mind, and definitely apply to enough schools that you're giving yourself some great options. We didn't talk about it, but some of these very highly selective schools, that's great to apply to. You definitely want to have some schools that are more targeted for you, that you look at the middle 50% range, which we didn't even get into at all, but every school does publish where their current freshman class is. Yeah. So you can see where you might fit, because one of the first fits that you have to consider when you're trying to choose a school is academic fit. You want to pick a school where you have a really good shot of being admitted to. So you can use middle 50% ranges. Every one of us has them on our websites, and see where the current freshman class middle 50% range of grades, range of test scores are, and that'll give you a sense of this is a school that's kind of a reach, or this school I fit right in. It's not a guarantee or a cutoff. It's just something, just more information that you can have. Keep in mind these middle 50% ranges there are 25% of the students that are above that, 25% that are below, so they are just middle 50% ranges. Many times they're not broken down by programs. Some programs that you apply to will be more competitive than other programs. We didn't get into that either, but I would definitely recommend exploring college websites. If you don't, especially, it's fine if you're undecided. Every school has a program that you can start undecided, but if you do know what you're interested in, I would definitely do a little bit more exploration on a website and make sure you look at sample classes you would take or different career paths, that is definitely what you think it is. So there's so many different things that you can do to make this process a little bit easier. Definitely take advantage of all the things we have on our website.
A lot of times students ask the middle 50%. And so, at Oswego, it's 86 to 93, the grades. That's the middle half of our class. And they say, oh, I have an 85. We have tons of students with an 85. A quarter of our students are below an 86, right? So it's just where you are. But if you have, if you're looking at grades and test scores and both of those numbers are below the 25th percentile, your chances of getting in are not great, but they're not impossible because your grades may have been dragged down by something, but you're actually incredibly strong in another area. That's where that special talent can come in. Remember, when you're looking at test scores, again, most schools are test optional now. Some schools were test optional before the pandemic, but many of us, like our two schools, only became test optional after COVID-19. So when students were looking at, so now that students get to decide whether they want to send their test score, what kind of scores do they send? They send the higher scores, right? You don't send in a score that's not going to help you. And so what happened to our medians? The 24 on the ACT became a 26, and the 1150 on the SAT became an 1180 or 1190. So that shift up we're not harder to get into. It's just that the people with those lower test scores wisely decided not to send them because they knew it wasn't going to help their application. We have left lots of time for questions. We also have our contact information up here now that I'm not blocking the screen. Please feel free to reach out if you have questions. You are going to get a copy of the presentation, but we're sure there must be questions, so don't be shy. Anyone? Oh, that's a good question. The question was, on average, how many colleges does a typical applicant or family apply to? Or there's a big range.
I was going to say, I think there's a big range. I would say for students that are applying to very highly selective schools, they might be applying to more because the admission rates are much lower, so they would naturally just apply to more schools. I would say probably 10 to 12. Would you say that's about the average?
What is your average?
8 to 10. So it depends. I had my son applied to 13, which was a lot. My daughters both applied to 20, which was crazy. So
mine did not do that, although two of my sons played sports in college, and that's a different process. And my son like his mother, applied early. Decision was deferred, but he then got in. So he ended up, but he had to apply to some other schools. But if you knew you were accepted early action somewhere to a school that's in your top few, you don't really need to apply to many more. But what's sometimes surprising when people apply to a ton of schools is when you ask them what schools, and it's everything from St. Joe's and Stony Brook to Berkeley and Tampa. And you're like, wow, that's all over the country in different sizes and different. So do yourself, if you can figure out that type of school that's right for you, probably apply within that range. If you know geographically, you want to be able to drive home in a certain number of hours, or, you definitely want a city, visit, and you'll know. You really do know in your gut. How many people have visited colleges already? Anyone? Yeah. So when you got on a campus, did you just automatically say, I like it, or no? There were times I drove we're getting some head nods. I remember driving 5 hours and my son said, no, not getting out of the car. I thought, how do you know? But you know what? He knew. And that's great. And trust your gut, because you're picking up on a lot of different data points. And, when you get up on a campus, you just know if you see yourself there or not.
Right. And definitely when you do have the opportunity to visit, talk to as many people as you can. I've taken my own kids where they were not interested, and then we had some really dynamic tour guide, and it completely changed their opinion of the school. So try to really get to talk to people and see if you see yourself at any of the campuses that you visit. So I think it is important to try to visit beforehand, but sometimes if you can't visit beforehand, sometimes it's just actually less expensive to pay the application fee and apply and go visit after the fact. So don't stress if you can't visit, just add that one more application. And in answer to your question, a lot depends on how intricate the application is. If, some students will, after a certain point, they're like, well, I'll apply if there's no supplemental essay. If there's a supplemental essay, I'm not doing it. So, there is a range, and a lot depends on the type of student. Any other questions?
A question that we get all the time that I'm wondering if anyone has is people always ask, is it better to take a regular level class and get a higher grade versus taking AP or honors? Does anyone ever wonder that? Yes? No? Yep. It's a question we do get a lot. I think I said before, everyone really has to find their right level. Of course, it's great if you can challenge yourself. I mean, why not senior year if you haven't tried, an AP class or college level class? What's the advantage? If you're successful in that class, you are getting a college level class. And you get a transcript. You pay that few $100s. You get actual college credit. You take the advanced placement exam. The entire SUNY system. If you get a 3, 4, or 5 on the exam, you get college credit. You can bring in up to 30 credits. That is a year of college almost. Most degrees are about 120 credits. Usually take 15 credits a semester, 30 credits a year. There's some variation, but that's the sort of approximate. That's what most people do. So think about how much money and time you could save if you challenge yourself in high school. You're showing us you're ready for college because you're doing college level work already. So it's definitely something to think about, not required at all schools, but if you're applying to really selective schools, they're probably expecting that you will have some of that. But you don't, is it taking an AP class that you get grade in the 70s, probably that, it's probably better to have the regular Regents level class with the higher grade. But everyone likes some subjects better than others, so you can always try, if you struggle with math, you're not going to go for...
And that reminds me that sometimes if you're applying to a specific program, if you're applying to a STEM field, we're going to be scrutinizing your STEM grades a little bit more carefully. And for some programs that you're applying to, there might be prerequisite courses that you have to have. So keep that in mind. If you have an idea, if you know you want to go into engineering, keep in mind you should at least have pre-calculus for almost any engineering program, probably ideally calculus. But again, so there are some nuances to this whole process, and definitely keep that in mind. But in answer to your question, we don't want to see you struggling, really, really struggling, but of course we want to see you challenging yourself.
And we talked about recalculating grade point averages and how New York State only makes you stick with social studies and English. There are other states that are different. Lori used to work for a school in Massachusetts, a state school. Massachusetts requires 4 years of high school math. So you are out of the running if you hadn't met that standard. So if your dream is to attend a UMass school, stick with math. And that's why it's great to have, done the research about the schools and find those. You don't want to find out too late in the game that you can't even apply to a school because you didn't take a certain course. That's a great question. Every admissions office has an athletic liaison, but there is no one who's accepted to a school without the admissions office saying that this person is admissible. The admissions office, no coach can, not at my school, no. Not at any. So if you're interested. So the question about, so if you're an athlete and you're looking to play sports, you're going to want to look at the NCAA website. There are different rules for Division I and Division II. D1 and D2 schools can give you money for athletic scholarship. D3 schools cannot, but that does not mean that D3 schools do not recruit. All of our coaches at Oswego, we actually have 24 varsity teams and 22 club teams that play against other schools, but all the varsity coaches recruit students. So there's a recruit questionnaire. You want to get in touch with those coaches, but at D1 and D2, there's certain periods where you're not allowed to reach out.
But you do want to fill out there is a recruitment form on pretty much any website for any school, D1, D2. So that's the way that you get noticed. That's the way, there are other ways, but if you haven't been noticed yet, you would want to fill out a recruitment form.
Is anyone an athlete that's interested in playing sports? We have a bunch in the here. That's important to visit, right, and check out the team and the coach. I always think that, no matter what you want to study, there are lots of different professors in that field at a school, but you probably had lots of different coaches, some of whom you got along with better than others or you liked more than others. So that, that relationship can be really important. So trust your gut on that too. Sometimes my middle son was being recruited with two of the schools that were looking at him, the coaches left and went other places. And in one case, he said, you can come with me to Arizona. And my son didn't really want to go to Arizona. But that school where the person left said, well, you can come play for me, but he wasn't that coach's recruit, and he didn't really want to. That, like Lori said, there's some things you can't control, and definitely with athletics, you don't know if the coach is going to stay, or you don't know if whatever position you play on your sports or whatever you do, if they just recruited 3 goalies and you're a goalie, you may not be what they're looking for that year. And again, you can't take that personally. But definitely, I think sports, if you know you want to play, is a great way to get down from the universe of about 6,000 schools to a more manageable number. Just like if you're looking for a great dance team or a great, theater program or music program, you're going to look at those schools that really do well in that area. So the questions about the net price calculator and how some schools do a good job and some schools don't do such a good job. All colleges are required somewhere on their website to have the net cost calculator. That doesn't mean it's easily accessible or maybe easy to understand. So your further question is, well, I think talking to financial aid, but
I was just going to say the same thing. I would say most schools will, you can reach out to the student aid office and set up an appointment and speak to them directly. Because many schools, the admissions counselors are not really involved in financial aid. I never know who's applied for financial aid, who hasn't. But our student aid office will absolutely, you can make an appointment in person, virtually, on the phone, and then you can go over your personal situation a little bit more.
Merit. Well, there are 2 kinds of aid, right? There's need-based aid. That's where you fill out the free application for federal student aid and also the tuition assistance program. A lot of people who can afford to live on Long Island is expensive, and I talk with a lot of families who say that, I'm not out of that range. But so that's the need-based aid. And there's also a really great scholarship in New York State called the Excelsior Scholarship, which if you're adjusted gross income on your taxes. But the funny thing about how colleges look at financial aid, they used to, if you're starting college, some of you are going to start college in 2024, right? They used to look at 2023 taxes. That was hard to get all that information in time. Because did you do your taxes January 1st? No. I mean, I do my taxes when I get all the forms. So they started looking at prior year. So that a student starting college in 2024, they're looking at your 2022 taxes. Guess what? Those are done, right? So you can see what your adjusted gross income is. You could see if that number is $125,000 or less, you get free tuition at a SUNY or CUNY. There's some rules there's some steps you have to follow, but that's $7,070 at a SUNY. That's an amazing deal. So that's need-based aid. That's the New York State Excelsior Scholarship. Schools also have merit scholarships, and that's based on sometimes they're special, because of a talent, but a lot of times it's based on your grades, sometimes grades and test scores, right? And some schools you have to apply to be considered for scholarships. Other schools will automatically consider you. At Oswego, you apply to Oswego, we consider you for merit scholarships. And more than 40% of our students, even though we're already really affordable, we give merit scholarships. Now, what happens and you do automatically get considered? Well, let me just hear about Penn State but if you get your scholarship and you say, wait, my friend said they got, wait, why didn't I get more money? And I see you have a higher scholarship. How much did I miss it by? Reach out and ask that question. There's always sort of an appeals process. You ask nicely, is that the most scholarship money? Is there anything that we can do? What's the worst thing that happens? It stays the same. We don't take away your offer of admission. But don't expect a different answer without some new information. But sometimes students didn't provide a test score, or they're really knocking it out of the park senior year, and that brings their grades up, and that's just the sort of little bit they needed to move from one scholarship level to the next. So always ask that question, because that one question may get you thousands of dollars. There's also something in financial aid office called professional discretion. Remember I said you look back 2 years, right? So 2022, well, maybe 2023 is very different financially for your family. I always, if you win the lottery, don't tell. Because we're going to use 2022, and that's legitimate. But if something happens in the other direction, like you lose a job or you have a lot of expenses, reach out to financial aid offices. They can use what's called professional discretion, and they can make adjustments. You might have to provide a little bit of documentation, but you can explain your situation, and they can change your financial aid, that need-based piece.
I was just going to say, unfortunately, Penn State does not give a lot of merit-based scholarships. They give some. Most of them do have a need-based component. You do have to apply for some of them. There are some that you're considered for. But every school is really different, so it's worth reaching out to the student aid office. The university I used to work for definitely gave merit aid, and if a senior had a phenomenal year and they had missed a scholarship level, we would reconsider them with their senior grade. So every school does things different. It's worth reaching out and finding out about.
Did that answer? You want to look at the cost of attendance at schools. I think sometimes people get stuck on sticker price, right? Oh, I'm only applying to SUNY's because this school looks more expensive. Well, you may not be paying that at that school. And also students get stuck on their scholarship. But, this school gave me $20,000 and you're giving me $5,000. Well, if the school that gave you $20,000 costs $80,000 and you're paying $60,000, and with the $5,000 at Oswego, that means $20,000. It's a better scholarship, but not a better overall. The cost of attendance is less. So what other questions?
Well, you are welcome to reach out to either one of us if you do think of. Not everybody likes to ask in the crowd, and sometimes you're not thinking of it, but we're absolutely happy to answer your questions at any point. And we'll stay behind, and if you do have any questions, you can certainly come up to us. So thank you all so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much. We'll stay here for any questions, but I just want to also to plug in that in August, we will continue this conversation and we will have our Common App boot camp for our seniors, and we will be providing assistance with the college applications, SUNY, as well as Common App. And we're also going to add a college admissions essay review. We're going to have some college representatives sit down with your senior class of 2024 and just give feedback on your draft, your first draft, or maybe it's your second draft of your college admissions essay. So that's coming up. I want to wish everyone a great end of the school year. And congratulations if you have an older sibling, child. Congratulations to the class of 2023. And I will be here for any questions. So have a great night. Thank you for coming.